Good afternoon, everybody. This is episode number 32 of the Sports Consiglieres Podcast. Along with me, always, is my partner, Jerry. Staying with this Giant theme, 100th anniversary. Our next guest played for the Giants in the mid-'90s. This is the first guest we had in that era. He also played at Lacey Township in New Jersey, played at Princeton University, and the Giants, and then finishing up his career with the Indianapolis Colts. I think had an important legacy of high school, college, and professional career in New Jersey. Undrafted, he earned a spot with the Dallas Reeves Giants. He played 5 seasons. It's our pleasure to introduce the former Giant player, now the Senior Director of Player Engagement for the NFL, Keith Elias. Keith, welcome to the show, and sorry for amateur hour, with the start of it. But I appreciate you coming on the show, and really, it's we've had highlights some players from the 80s, the 86 and 90s teams, but not your era. So just thanks for meeting with us. And also a couple of things, just our condolences to the Princeton University football fan. I know one of the players was lost in that attack a couple weeks ago, and then also probably in player engagement, you're probably got your hands full with the LA Fires rescheduling and everything else. But I want to, sorry to start off on a somber note, but yes, I'm Irish. We always think something bad's going to happen, so I guess we'll get to that in player engagement. But hey, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, well, so first of all, my pleasure to be here, and second, you're right. Like, there is a lot going on, both for the Princeton football family and then, of course, with the NFL. And there's always a lot of things going on with players. But this in particular with the Rams and the Fire was certainly a curveball. And we were tasked with helping to support that as that went along.
Yeah, exactly. So and I don't know what is going in the site, but I mean, listen, the NFL, I guess they acted quickly and everything else. But just growing up, you start at Lacey Township is not really, I would say, a football powerhouse, but that short conference is a tough conference in New Jersey. If you're somebody listening outside that state, you're dealing with some big time programs down in the sort. So how is it? Well, first of all, we introduced you to the sport, and then just sum up your career in Lacey.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Well, first of all, I feel like in terms of being introduced to the sport, I have to say I was born innately that I needed to play football, right? So, I was first grew up in Brooklyn. We didn't have the organized football when I was a young kid, and when we moved down to the shore, that was one of the first things I said, to my mom. I wanted to play football, and I know she was really hesitant about that first year. She couldn't really go watch me play. She'd come at halftime, and by the time I was in 8th grade, she was the president of the league, and by the time I was in high school, she's yelling down plays to the coaches, right? And in college, she's getting in fights in the stands. So there was a real evolution for my family. But I would say that getting an opportunity to play at Lacey Township High School was such a blessing because of Coach Lou Versillo. And he didn't just teach me the game of football. That man taught me the game of life. And he became so much more than a coach. And I think he is spectacular, but I also think a lot of high school football coaches are like that for their players. They are the second father. They're like the voice of God in their lives. And that's a really big responsibility. And Coach Lou, or V as we call him, he took it seriously, and he really instilled in me the values of the game and the values of life.
Yeah, but I just want to thank you, Keith. I know it was starting to show a little choppy, but I'll pass along my partner Jerry, so I know he's chomping at the bit.
So Keith, from there, right from Lacey, you go to Princeton. You had to battle Jay Fiedler for a few years. So just tell us about the Ivy League experience.
Yeah, well, first of all, it was kind of like back when I went the way football should be in college, where, we were true student athletes, right? And you had to make sure that you kept it together on the upper side of campus where you were going hundreds of years of education. And I will say, from the education standpoint, Princeton it blew me away with the care that the professors had, just the subject matter, the way the thing about Princeton was they taught you how to learn. It wasn't like, hey, let's just go memorize these facts and figures. It was, let me show you how to be an innovative thinker. And that was the beauty of being there on campus. And then when you throw in the fact that then you're surrounded by like-minded people and want to play the game of football for the love of the game, well, wow. It was probably four of the best years of my life, right? Just the experiences, the camaraderie, the friendships. Still to this day, I'm on a text thread with the guys I graduated with, and we speak every day. And so I've got brothers for life. And, of course, going to a school like Princeton really does set you up with a network for what you want to do next. For me, not so much. The network wasn't as helpful trying to get into the NFL, but that's what God had for me, and that's the direction I went.
And then I guess in the Ivy, you had like 21 records. So, I mean, I think you have most career points, single season all-purpose yards. So I think some of those records are still standing. So I think, kudos to you. But like when your career was over, yeah, exactly. When your career was over, like, did anybody say, hey, you got a real shot here, or did anybody come scout your games, or did you go in any of these senior bowls, or the Gray Bowl, and did you realize they'd say, hey, I could play here?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, so first of all, coming out of high school, the goal was to play in the NFL. So there were other places I looked at because I wanted to play in the NFL, but it's not something you can bank on. Nobody can bank on playing in the NFL because football, one injury can take it away from you. So ahead of me, the Garretts had gotten some time in the NFL. Jason Garrett, Judd Garrett, right? Johnny. And of course, Jason went on to coach. And so did Judd. And then, so I thought I can go to Princeton and still make it in the NFL. So that was goal day one. And it was after my junior year when I led the nation in rushing. It was 1AA at the time, but I led the nation in rushing. Then it was like, okay, I was getting looks. Folks were coming to visit. And so my senior year, I was like, okay, there has to be clear-cut priorities in my life and my schedule. Number one is this shot that I have to play in the NFL. So everything my senior year was geared toward that piece. And as clubs came to visit and I had interviews, I was selected to play in the Blue-Gray game on Christmas Day. And then, of course, the East-West Shrine. So I played in the East-West Shrine Bowl, which was huge to be able to get, the look from scouts. And then I also was selected to go to the NFL Combine. Another, great opportunity to meet with coaches and to show what I could do.
No, that's awesome, Keith. I mean, again, you have a great story. I mean, Giant fans love guys from Jersey. And I remember, when you started camp, which I believe was FDU Madison back then, right? And you had that cult following coming into that first camp because you were a Jersey guy. So just tell us about your experience, because I mean that was a real transitional year, I would say, for the Giants, for Giant fans. LT and Lawrence, LT and Sims retired after the '93 season, and that brings us to you in '94. So just tell us about that first training camp.
Yeah, and what's really cool about that is Phil didn't retire right away, so he was in that first mini camp, and even that short period of time of being with him, I learned some real leadership principles that I took with me for the rest of my life. If we have time, I'll tell you one really amazing story about him. And LT was kind of, even though he wasn't on the team, he was kind of always around, and so there was a transition between that team and our team. And then there were different guys that come up and take those roles, like a Michael Strahan, right, who became friendly with, and he's one of the best human beings that you'll ever meet. Great on the field, but off the field, he's a true amazing human. So, and I will say about the cult following, it was special to grow up in New Jersey, and then play there, and to feel the fans rooting for you. And it absolutely spurred me on to be able to, lay it on the line in every play, whether it's blocking a punt or taking a hit on special teams or, returning a kickoff, whatever it was. You really felt like you were doing it for you guys, right? For the fans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then that '94, I guess that was Dan Reeves' first year. I think, you were kind of on the cusp. I guess they expanded the roster, I guess, to 48 to 53, which is big. I think was that the first year that they expanded the roster.
I think it happened it might have happened a couple of years before, but
Okay.
but either way, it was Dan Reeves was another incredible human, beyond just a football coach, another guy who taught me about life, you know? Yeah, so I was surrounded by incredible people.
Yeah, I mean that 94 season, I mean 93 Reeves comes in, they make the playoffs, they get eliminated by the Cowboys. You know, Sims has he kind of restored. It was nice for Phil Sims to go out his last year, on a high note. They make the playoffs. He shoots a ton of enthusiasm back into the organization. Now 94, right? You guys are, I believe, 3-7, right? Roll 6 in a row, and then sadly miss the playoffs. So
yeah, we started off 3-0, and then lost all those in a row. We actually started off 3-0 and went on our bye, and then we lost, and then so there were growing pains for sure. When you that happens when you move on to move from a quarterback, and again, Phil, like I was saying, he wasn't just a quarterback; he was a leader. Like I'll tell you the story. We, right there in minicamp, I blew an assignment. It was my first time in the huddle with him. I blew an assignment, and then Dan Reeves comes and starts to chew me out a little bit, and Phil said, "No, Dan, I called it wrong. He's all right. I got it," and he took the hit for me, right? And then afterward, he said, "Hey, come here, young man," and he was like, "Don't ever come into my huddle unprepared again," right? And that is a massive leadership principle. He took the heat from me, and that gave him voice in my life to be able to then correct my behavior to the point where, hey, man, I was making sure I knew everybody's assignment next time I was in that huddle, not just my own. So that's the type of leader he was. And you miss that. When you have to transfer that leadership, that's difficult,
And if you look at 95 season, you still made the roster. But just doing some of the. I mean, you had Rodney Hampton, Tyrone Wheatley. I think Herschel Walker was on the team. Charles Way. I mean, I don't know if Way was there, but yeah, it was a stacked backfield. Then you talk about the next season, 95, and I think still on the roster. So I mean, for whatever reason, I heard this before about like Ray Lucas with Bill Parcells, is like the more you can do. So I mean, I think it's for you. It's like I think how you made the team was a great story. It was like you scored a touchdown in special teams. So I think that kind of, and your energy and enthusiasm still carried, even though you probably weren't getting too much burn. So
yeah, well, so my rookie year I got hurt, right? So that was difficult because they didn't get really a chance to then see what I could do. And then you're right, like that second year going in, wow, it was like there were articles about our backfield that didn't even mention me, right? You had Rodney Hampton, you had Dave Meggett. They both have been Pro Bowl guys. You had Herschel Walker, who could arguably end up being in the Hall of Fame, because the Hall of Fame is not just the NFL Hall of Fame, it's the Pro Football Hall of Fame. If they count the USFL, that dude should be in the Hall of Fame, right? Yeah. You can't talk about football in America without Herschel Walker. And so I'm like, there's no room. And so you really better find and maximize the opportunities you have. And in the preseason, felt like I was able to block a couple of punts and do some things that add value to the team. You come in on third down, you better crush that blitz, right? You better be where you are at all times. Don't turn the ball over, and be elite and enjoy doing it. And that's the way to kind of, break into the team.
Now, Keith, so when you're on the Giants, you had a young buck, if you will, of a special teams coach who went on to have a very storied career, Joe D. Camillus, who was Dan Reeves' son-in-law. But he had back then, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that was his first crack as being a special teams. I mean, now we refer to it as a special teams coordinator, but he was a special teams coach. And boy, did he really have a very good career in that field, so to speak. So what was it like, playing under him, and really getting to acclimate to special teams in the NFL?
Yeah, my guy, Joe D, he fantastic. Brought energy, but he also, if you're a coach, like you have to hit multiple angles, right? You have to be able to explain things to people on different levels. Joe had a great way of talking to me, who maybe hadn't done it before, and to a veteran, and giving nuances to each thing, making sure we're in the right position. And the best thing a coach can do for a player is put them in a position to be successful. So make sure they know what they're doing, and then you can attack at full speed. And he did it with passion. And so Joe D is my guy. I love that guy.
Awesome. And then just in 96, I guess you was the last season with the Giants. And in 97, I guess you kind of tested the market a little bit. So what happened in the 97 season, and then between that end of the 96 with the Giants and 97?
First Dan left, right? So that was and I had been like Dan's guy. So then he went down to Atlanta, and he offered me a roster spot in Atlanta. But then I also had an opportunity to go on a visit to Carolina. And again, like this is the era before cell phones, so when I get down to Carolina, right, like they're like, they offered me a spot. And then I said, yeah, but I promised Dan Reeves I would go to Atlanta and visit there, right? But I wasn't Aaron Rodgers. So Carolina said, okay, we respect that. So then I went back to set up my visit to Atlanta, and Carolina signed somebody. And then because I went to Carolina, Dan nobody communicated. So Dan thought I was going to sign to Carolina. So then he signed somebody.
Yeah.
And then I ended up being out of luck. And, that's where, your agent has to be really wise with that. Like, so if he knew something like, hey, while you're there in Carolina, they offered you the deal, sign that deal, right? Like, make sure you have a deal in hand. But look, learning experience, and ultimately ended up having to sit out for a year. And that usually marks the end of your NFL experience. And I was fortunate enough that the GM at Carolina knew what happened. And then he went to Indy, right? And then I was able to sign with Indianapolis after that.
Well, you talk about Indianapolis, and you talk about the backfield in with the Giants, and now you're with Edgerrin James and Marshall Faulk. I mean,
yeah. But
and yeah, Peyton. So, like, talk about like playing alongside a lot of historical names in NFL. Just talk a little bit of how that how that experience was in Indy.
Yeah, well, first of all, Marshall Faulk, he's probably the single best football player I've ever been around, counting all positions, right? His knowledge of the game, his ability to get tough yardage, but also, break in two halves to make a tackle miss. But I also knew when signing there that he was at the end of his deal, right? So after that, he went to the Rams, right? And we drafted Edgerrin James, but who knew that Edgerrin James was going to be Edgerrin James? So going into that preseason, and plus the Edge was holding out, right? He not holding out, but he needed to get his deal first, right? So I was starting, and so I just remember our last preseason game against the Saints, and catching a hot read from Peyton and taking it for a 27-yard touchdown, and thinking, this is it. This is it, right? And get to the sideline. My boy Chad Bradsky was like, dude, you're going to rush for 1,000 yards. You're going to shock the world, right? Like, this is awesome. And then Edgerrin James goes in the second half and has like 142 yards. And I don't touch the ball again until like week 14, right? But that's the NFL. And I'm not going to cry me a river on that, because guess what? Like, I could have gotten hurt in college and never had this NFL experience. So all of life really is how you frame the story that you tell yourself. Because I wouldn't be a senior director in NFL player engagement right now if I didn't play in the NFL, and I wouldn't have played in the NFL. Like, you know what I mean? So like, you have to be grateful for the things that you did get to accomplish, and the people you meet, and the guys you're still friends with. Like, I'm still friends with Strahan and Amani Toomer and guys that I played with. Still get to talk to some guys. Marcus Pollard was a teammate of mine, and now he's the head of player engagement for the Jaguars. And like, these are lifelong relationships, So it was a wonderful, wonderful experience all the way around.
That's awesome to hear. And again, great. We need more people to put things in perspective, as you just did. One door closes, it's for a reason. Another door opens, and you take advantage of that opportunity. But just swinging back to the Giants overall, could you just outline a little bit? Because I always felt, he had a great career. It didn't really work out as expected with the Giants, but what was it truly like? Because he's a legend playing for Dan Reeves.
Dream come true. Like, again, going from high school, college, or pro, all of my coaches that dealt with me personally, Coach V, Coach Steve Gregorio, God rest in peace, Dan Reeves, rest in peace. Like, these guys influenced me on the field and off the field. The drive that Coach Steve Gregorio at Princeton instilled in me, Coach Verbit there, even though he didn't coach me personally, the support and the love that those guys showed. And Dan Reeves, like you said, legend. He played he played in and coached in a Super Bowl. He touched 9 Super Bowls, as a player and a coach. That's spectacular.
And it's hard to get a second act in the NFL too. So I mean, and he did, especially he had success with Denver, came with the Giants, and we were coming off the sugar high of the Super Bowls, and then he had the Ray Hanley. So, the pieces were still there, and he was able to put everything together. So,
yeah, and I think that was the time period we were all learning too at that time period that if you don't have the guy under center, it's tough. It's tough. I know we like to say defense wins championships, but I'll tell you, man, it's very rare that a defense will win a championship if you don't have the guy under center. You maybe count 1 or 2, but you need that guy, and that's what I mean. That's why playing with a guy like Peyton Manning, that's elite level play right there.
Are you surprised the success that Peyton Manning has? Not only on the field, but like off the field as like a spokesman for the game, and also his brother, him and his brother have the simulcast, which is
love it,
which is I rather watch that rather than the regular the regular cast. So it's just, were you surprised? Did he have that much of? Because you look at him, he looks like a gosh darn it type of person. You got
the sheriff was shrewd. He's shrewd, man. Like first of all, the Manning cast, I love it. I just texted him, I think yesterday, how much I enjoyed the season, but his ability to understand and dissect the game right away. So to parallel the story, Phil Simms saying, you better know everything when you get in the huddle. I knew everything now. So through the rest of my NFL experience, I knew everything. I get in the huddle. I knew sometimes more than the quarterback. I knew when quarterbacks were calling the wrong audibles. And I'm like, okay, how do I help? Because this is not a good play. Then I get to Peyton Manning, his rookie year, preseason. And we call this play down by the goal line. And I know, okay, this is man-to-man. I've got a choice route. 99 out of 100 times this route breaks out, right? Because the linebacker's got you or something. Every now and then, like every once in a blue moon, you're going to get the safety roll up on you. We got more of that because of Marshall Faulk, where they wanted to put a real cover guy. Because if you have a linebacker covering Marshall, you lose, right? So they had the safety come down. It just happened to be me. And, I knew right then the way they were playing me, the move was to break to the post. And I'm thinking to myself, Peyton doesn't know this. He hasn't seen this enough to know the only move here is for me to go to the post. And I said, so if I break to the post and he throws the out, the safety is going to pick it. It's going to be a 96-yard touchdown the other way. And I thought to myself, look, this all happened in a split seconds, by the way. This is all going on. And I said to myself, look, do the right thing because we'll deal with it. And so I break to the middle of the field. I turn and the ball hits me in the chest. So that means that Peyton, as a rookie, knew the look, knew what he should do, and also knew that I knew the look and I knew what I was going to do in the most rare case, and he threw it before I made the break. And I said, I caught this touchdown. I said, that's it. This guy, that's it. It's Hall of Fame, man. Unbelievable.
That's awesome. And, listen, you mentioned the Hall of Fame, and, as Giant fans, we really hope that Eli, gets in on the first ballot because, again, you're talking about two brothers that have really excelled off the field, but they excelled on the field. And, they played – the game was never bigger, big for them in big moments. And, they conquered what they needed to conquer. So, hopefully Eli, gets into the Hall of Fame. I know that'll be probably a spirited debate when they get in that room. But, to me, there's no question, 2-time Super Bowl MVP. I mean, defeating the greatest quarterback, or probably the greatest quarterback of all time, not once but twice. But anyway, Keith, so now let's transition now. So how, your NFL career is over. So now how do we get to the league office?
Yeah, backed into it, man. It wasn't a plan. When I was done playing, I called up that Princeton network and got a job and was working in real estate. Very thankful for that. And then I just kept leaving my job at times to go speak at schools or speak at events or speak at men's groups, and then ended up doing that for like a decade. And then I heard through Charles Way on the Giants that the league was connecting with players, former players, because the transition from the NFL is extraordinarily difficult. I mean, it is brutal. And they took a group of guys to train them up and then to be able to walk alongside the men as they transitioned out to make sure that we could help repurpose their skill set to make them as successful off the field as they were on, right? So I applied for that gig. In 2012, I get that. I'm just a consultant for the league as a transition coach, but it's like, for me, it's like, how they say Mozart could just play. I just understood the space. I had gone through it myself, and I began to get more entrenched in the sports and athletic transition space. And then soon, within 2 years, the league asked me to work with them full time. And I built out the largest transition program with them, and really in the world. We have folks from all over sports coming to check out what we were doing in transition. And then from there, it continued to grow, and now I'm fully embedded into the player engagement space, where we serve, we equip, we empower players before, during, and after their NFL experience, and all of the stuff that off the field. And I personally am tasked with developing and resourcing the folks at the club level that deal with the players on a daily basis. So it's always something new every day. I love it. I feel like, I hit the jackpot twice in my life. So it's an awesome way to make a living, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's great, because I mean, one of my favorite 30 for 30s, I guess it's unfortunate, was broke. And then the one player said, some of my family members knew when I was getting paid before I was, because you were so focused on playing football that, and trying to get better, you don't realize what's around you, and people think of you as they're a cash cow. But I mean, I think what the league did, I think is really great. But like, if you just walk a little bit, how does your cycle start with the season? Do they take it like rookie camp and introduce you to them, or like, you said 32 different teams? How does your like schedule work with the position that you're in now?
Yeah, it's neat. So we have a team, right? A team of folks in the league. We're not as many as we used to. They're always cutting back on the head count and stuff. But so the idea is like, when the rookies come in, we have mandatory programming. We have 18 rookie modules that they have to go through. And so that happens at the club level. And then we are there to serve and support and resource that and collect the data, and to be there at times to do the programming, right? Whether it's education on healthy relationships, education on the gambling policy, right? So they have to go through, and so many of them are, time management, stress management. Like I said, healthy relationships. We have 3 of them on the financial front, and then there's more programming on for second and third year players on the financial front, because we want guys to take this opportunity to create generational wealth, right? And so there's a lot of education that goes, and we're responsible for that. Responsible for the curation of it, and then supporting the implementation of it at the club level. So that happens in your off season through camp, right? Once the season starts, hey man, you got to go do the deed. You got to play. So we have less touch points with players during the season. We still have professional development, a session with the team, and some other things. So we make club visits. We'll go out to the clubs at least twice a year, every club, off season, in season. We'll still do things in the in season. Like we did some really cool things on fatherhood with the Jaguars this year, because when they were going to London, they were gone for 11 days. Well, let's talk about some best practices on how to, if your kids aren't coming out, how do you keep in touch with them? How do you, so we have a lot of stuff we do on personal development and fatherhood and leadership and stuff with players. So we still do all that. And then we have, like I said, in season a little bit. And then you get to the off season. When that off season, that's when we put on our own programs, career tours and music and fashion and finances, right? And real estate. And we just did a webinar on farming, right? And so we introduce all these players to possible avenues that they can pursue for the rest of their lives. And we do that in the off season. So our season looks a little bit, different as you kind of go through the year. And that's also what makes it exciting, right?
That's fantastic. So I'm assuming for the Giants, Charles Way is their rep. Is that correct?
He was. And then Charles left the Giants to become the head of player engagement for the NFL. Okay. And then he left to pursue something else. And then David Tyree was the head of player engagement there. And now Ashley Lynn is the head of player engagement for the Giants now.
Okay.
So there's just one person. Like she has support staff, Brandon Harlan, and and our you remember our good friend, our linebacker Jesse. He helps out as well.
Yeah, Jesse Armstead. Sure.
Yeah. So Jesse Armstead's there. He's kind of like an unofficial part of their support system for the players, and it's always great to see him too when I go back there.
Well, Charles Way is a very busy person now because his wife, is number 2 in charge of the state. So he's, he's probably like arm candy now at all these events that he has to attend. So
he's another great human being too. By the way, the Giants have a track record of bringing in people who not just play, but they're just great humans.
That's fantastic. I mean, you're doing good things, with the league. What would you say in a person in your role and your position is a challenge that keeps coming up for the players? Like if there's one thing, is it in the finance area or, something like that you feel that you're spending more time providing more resources?
I would say this. I wouldn't say like, oh, this area is a challenge. I would say that if you can master the 5 F's, right? If you can master, these are the things I think. If you can master these things, then you're going to have a successful NFL experience, right? So number 1 is football itself. It's a different game than college, and you have to spend time and getting up to speed on the speed and the mental capacity for the game. So number 2 is your family, right? Like you have to find a way for this newfound notoriety to be able to navigate the asks and demands of family. Number 3 are your friends, right? And sometimes you may have a friend that you think is a friend, but it's really a frenemy, right? How do you navigate? How do you keep the people around you that are going to be able to, and how do you create boundaries so that like you don't even get all of these asks? Because if you're a good dude and this person's been with you your whole life, like, hey, I need $100,000 for this, or that's a very difficult thing. And so I think it's really a wise thing for players to get a no person in their life, whether that person's an agent, whether it's their mom. Hey, don't even talk about this stuff. I'm busy. I'm in the season. If you have anything like that, go talk to mom. Hey, if you have anything like that, here's the name of my agent. Talk to my agent, right? You want to create that buffer, right? So you've got football, you've got your family, you've got friends, you've got your finances. Look, in this league, it isn't about how much you make. It's about how much you keep.
Yeah.
And if you can get players to realize that this isn't coming around again, or you can't bank on it coming around again. So you want to save as much. The video game here, the win is saving, right, way more than you could ever spend, right? That's the idea. Save. And the last piece is relationships, right? Like you want to make sure that on the relationship front that you make smart decisions, because those decisions can affect all the rest of the things in your life, right? So that's pretty much it. If you can navigate those things, I will say, if you want to talk about a challenge or a new development, NIL on the college level, the transfer portal, those are things that are creating a different type of athlete coming up, and that needs to be resourced differently. So, but I
think everybody agree. I think everybody agrees with that. It's just almost like the Wild Wild West. But I'll leave you one point, and I'll close it, and Jerry will close it out. But Keith, I know one thing you do. encourage the players to do is go back and get their degree too. You talk, even though college, some of these players leave early or whatever else, but then I guess from doing the research for the show, you do encourage these kids to go back and get their 4-year degree.
Of course. So like we have 4 pillars when it comes to players, and one of them is continuing education. And we will and do everything we can to help players get their degree. We have tuition reimbursement, and the union even has scholarships. So like we want to make sure players do. Now, here's a funny thing. Players who have their college degree play longer. I don't know what the correlation is or why, but there is a correlation. And so we want to make sure that folks take advantage of that and get their college degree, or or some sort of trade or certificate or something that when this thing's over, they can go ahead and have something that they could apply to what's next in their life. And I know that of all the major leagues that we're ahead of the game in that area, but we want to continue to push that, right? So absolutely. Our other pillars are professional development, personal development, and I said it out of order, so now I'm blanking. So financial education. Yeah.
So, but listen, Keith, I can't thank you enough for going on. Thank you for being patient with us. But Jerry's going to finish the episode out. But I really appreciate it, especially at this time. But especially with we open up with the wildfires and everything else, by challenging for your office. But I'll pass this along to Jerry. And thanks again for your time. And it was really great to see your career. Jersey kid done well. So,
man, that means so much to me. I'm so thankful to be on. So like, I'm having the best time with you guys. I could talk sports with you guys all night. So thank you.
Likewise. So Keith, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I have to hit you up. What's the Super Bowl? Give us a Super Bowl prediction.
Well, before the year began, before the year even started, I predicted Kansas City, Detroit. But that, we just have like our little predictions. I don't know how that will be. I do think that I think anybody can take it at this point. Like I do think that there's such parity in the league. First of all, the game Buffalo-Baltimore, that's just going to be fun. If you're a football fan, and whoever wins that can go on and win the Super Bowl. Certainly Philadelphia is playing at a level right now that you can't put anything past them. But what the Rams just did, like, they're no slouch. The Rams could be Philly. So we got the whole thing. I mean, Kansas City coming off a bye, you kind of think like, hey, they're probably going to get this thing done. And so you're looking at Kansas City versus the winner of Baltimore and Buffalo. This thing is, man, the NFL, boy, it is awesome. And Detroit,
Rams defense looked great.
They did.
They looked great against Minnesota.
They did, yeah.
But Keith, again, listen, it was our pleasure having you on. Again, we've been having a good run with having a lot of ex-Giants. Having you on, the pride of Lacey Township, Princeton University, New York Giants, and now doing tremendous and very impactful things in the league office. We thank you for joining us. We will let you know when the show is up, and we will most definitely be in touch. So, Keith, thanks again. Anything you'd like to say closing out?
Just thank you. Thank you for thinking of me. Thank you for reaching out. Had a great time with you guys. And so anytime, let me know, and we'll do it again.
Awesome. This is Jimmy this is Jerry along with Jimmy, with Keith Elias, New Jersey football legend on 3 different levels. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next episode.